Okay, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to today's fireside chat with Reach for Change. Welcome, Amelia, Bettina, Eon, Shanette, Julia, Leon, Mark, all of you. Thank you so much for being here today. Uh, and a warm welcome, really warm welcome. Sweden is becoming warm now. So there is sunlight outside here in Stockholm. So that really feels good. But thank you for being here. And so today we are discussing social entrepreneurship with Nicklas Wallberg, who is country manager for Reach for Change. Reach for Change finds exceptional social entrepreneurs and helps them succeed. How? We'll learn soon when we invite him over for the chat. I'll take the first couple of minutes to introduce Startup Grind, the event, and the team. So, welcome to the Fireside Chat, Nicholas. Thank you for being here. I'm your session host, and this is for the community. My name is Naimul Abd. I'm a business advisor and partnerships lead at one of Stockholm's leading impact and cooperative consulting companies called Companion Stockholm. Some of you here might have met us in their startup building journey. Some of you might be meeting us and be in process in your building journey right now with us. And as a startup or a cooperative, you can book a free business advisory meeting with Companion to help you with your launch and business growth of your cooperative, friending, or startup. So, a warm welcome. Let's make this event lively. Introduce yourself on the chat, share your LinkedIn profile, and a one-line description like I'm a music tech entrepreneur looking for a co-founder. If you're looking if you have an opportunity or something to offer to other startups, you can say that I'm a consultant, can help you build your startups forward. If you have some questions about the event, about Companion, about Reach for Change, Nicholas, me, Startup Grind, you can raise them in the chat box. We formally start the event now, and I'll share my screen. Let's see if it's visible for everybody. Let's see, share the screen. Share here, and then we go here. Here we go. Okay. So again, a warm welcome. Social entrepreneurs, the real heroes, that's the topic, and Reach for Changes with us today. Today's agenda, a couple of minutes of introduction, won't hold you long here. And then we invite Nicholas over and we have a fireside chat, discussion, and interaction. We learn about Reach for Change, social entrepreneurship, how the sector is evolving. And then we take questions from audience. So my colleague, Marina Nart, will join in and raise questions from audience. And which is very important then for all of us to remember that it's good that we write all the questions, queries, or whatever opinions that we have in the chat. So use the chat for personal introductions, but also to ask your questions. Short and fast introduction about Startup Grind. We are the world's largest community of startups, founders, innovators, and creators. We organize a lot of events, flagship conferences, have a startup program, and you can find a lot of content about Startup Grind and our events on our social media channels, YouTube, Instagram. We are all over the place when it comes to social media. We often get a question of how big is Startup Grind. So it's more than 3.5 million entrepreneurs, innovators, and change makers spread across 600 plus chapters in 125 different countries. And we are here to make your journey as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as an innovator, or as a change maker easy, memorable, connected, enjoyable. I think that's what we are here for, and that's what Startup Grind stands for. To access your local community and see what are the events going on, you can come to startupgrind.com/Stockholm. There you'll find a lot of events and activities or whatever is happening in Startup Grind. For example, this Friday, like 3 days from now, we are holding an event with Forbes 30 under 30. The winners will be here and we'll be talking about their ventures, how they are making the world a better place. So it'll be an interesting event. Dora will be here, Michaela and Isabella. So follow their journeys, get inspired. Um, on 26th May, we have invited Johan Atby to come here and talk about how to build a social network. They have a successful, globally successful vertical social network called Fish Brain. So we can see their story and get get insights or tips on how to build, if we are in building communities, social networks, or tapping into attention economy, what's the best way to go forward. We have also invited ex-CEO of a leading agency, ad agency in Sweden, to come and speak to startups in start of June. So Sela Levine will be here and talking to startups on how to build your brand. That's really, really crucial as a startup, how your branding happens. So again, a very interesting event, and lots of new events are coming in. We are going to be bringing in some panel formats, workshop formats. We're right now in discussion with Barry School of Communication. So they'll be running something in start July. My colleague here, Marina and Beryl, they are working closely and trying to arrange a discussion session or a workshop in July on B Corps. So all that is happening. And if you want to access our previous events, you can access them here. So we had Lars, I think his event is not there yet, but we talked about equity ventures in our last event and how VC funding landscape is changing. Before that, we had Blocket and Eddie Oresi from Founders Institute. So all these events are accessible on our site. A big thank you to our partners who make this happen, who help us make this happen or bring this to you. Companion Stockholm, DevRel Events, Make Trade, and Sweden on the Go. Guys, you're doing awesome job. Please keep doing so. Last words, but very importantly, a big thank you to the Stockholm community. Ule, thank you for running the events picture perfect and tech perfect. So thank you, Jens, for being the mentor for Stockholm chapter. Amanda startup recently got a Vinova funding, so big congrats to you, Amanda. Continue with the journey of your startup and your other startup. Marina, thank you. You'll be here with Q&A. And Beryl, thank you for all the awesome work. I'll stop sharing my screen now, and we'll bring Nicklas and formally start the event. So welcome, Nicklas. I'm bringing you in. That's where I tell all the audience, this could be 10 or 15 seconds of quietness. Yeah. Yes, I think it's worked. 5 more seconds. 4, 3. Yes, you're here, Nicklas.
It works. Wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Brilliant. We are very excited that Reach for Change could join us, and Nicklas, you could take the time out. And we have been covering a lot of interesting topics here in the Startup Grind in terms of, we have been covering funding, pitching, marketing, but I think social entrepreneurship is very big right now. And that's what we thought when we were brainstorming as a team. Can we have something on social entrepreneurship? And thank you so much for being here. Why don't we start a little bit, go back a little bit, and if you can tell the audience about yourself, background, education, how you came into social entrepreneurship. Over to you.
Yeah, sure. All right, so a little brief then. I'm a farmer's son from outside of Norrköping, and if I speak Swedish, all the Swedish friends, they will hear that I have a bit of a farmish accent. And I say this because to me, it's really the background to my sort of love for entrepreneurship in a way, because farmers are usually sort of the core entrepreneur. They have a lot of issues and problems that they need to solve on their farm there and then. So they just have to solve things with what they have. And it's a very entrepreneurial spirit that is fostered amongst farmers. So that's something that I usually tend to want to lift up. But my background comes a little bit from, comms is my educational background, so PR and broadcasting, actually. I did that in Australia. But then I've been working with young people for a long time during my youth and early adulthood, especially in the capacity of running summer camps outside in the Swedish archipelago outside Norrköping. And at a beautiful spot there where I'm actually chairman of the board right now, trying to solve the whole issue with the pandemic and how to really get young people out to opportunities that, they've had a super rough year. So I've had the entrepreneurial side with me. I really enjoy comms work, and young people has always been with me in my journey. And I kind of combine all of these things with a lot of the stuff that I've done on my journey. But I think if I would choose three things that has really sort of been my life, it's one around solving problems or seeing opportunities, and it could be a business opportunity, or it could be a social problem that I see that I want to solve. So that sort of the energy that you get from solving problems, I really embrace. And young people, as I mentioned, has sort of come back to me time and time again, really, to see the change that you can do early in a person's life, how that can really build that person and change society from the youth and up. So that's really interesting. And I think the last one is sort of build joy and energy with what you're doing. So I get a lot of energy, I get a lot of joy when I achieve something together with someone else. And also music has played a big part in my life. And I think that's because of the joy it brings me, the energy it brings me, because without that, it's really hard to do the things that I want to do.
Okay, brilliant. So entrepreneurship, young people, joy and energy, music. Let's tap a little bit on music, because you were doing something in Australia. Can you tell the audience about that?
Yeah, so as I said, I went to university in Australia, and then I moved to Melbourne in Australia, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. Was I going to start in a regular ad agency or start something myself or whatever? And I was sitting there together with my friend, another Swedish friend actually moved to Melbourne roughly at the same time. And we were sitting there, graduates. I remember vividly that we had these yellow pen pads, the yellow ones. Usually you see them in American movies and stuff. So my friend had bought them because it felt a bit cooler. And we actually had like nicer pens as well for the first time, since graduation. And we were sitting there at a cafe drinking trendy coffees. And then we saw a tram passed. And then it sort of sparked an imagination or a thought that we had of, creating something sort of out of the ordinary, and how to bring joy to the people. And we took an idea from Europe, where we wanted to bring music to unusual places. And Melbourne, there's two things that really stands out for Melbourne. One is trams. So it's a bit like Gothenburg. So trams is like, it's the identity of the city. And then it's the rich culture life and live music. So we decided to combine those two. So we started to invite bands to play on trams. And then we filmed it, and then we uploaded it on our website. And at the time, we started with Vimeo. It was at the time when Vimeo, YouTube, don't know which one we're going to choose. And this project, which it was from the beginning, sort of became a bit of it was part of the music industry. So when a band was going to release their album, they did TV, they did print, they did radio, and they did tram sessions. So so tram sessions was the name of the concept, and it was just phenomenal. We've had some of the biggest bands, if not the biggest bands in Australia, and also some international artists playing on those trams, and seeing that joy and that energy. When you step into the tram, and then you see some maybe a bit of a boring corporate office suits or whatever, and then you have this random guy coming in playing really cool music, like good quality music, fantastic music, but just in a tram where you don't expect it. And then at the end you see that the suits, they kind of join in, and some are starting to dance and all that kind of stuff. So it's a brilliant experience, and something that I really miss actually after moving to Sweden.
But could we not replicate it here? We have tunnelbana in Stockholm, for
I know.
example.
I thought about it. It's not the same really, but I've actually had some ideas. I was close doing one with first aid kits in Stockholm. We don't have that many trams in Stockholm, but there's a few. But who knows? It might come.
Yeah, and with COVID, the entire public transport system, maybe it needs something like this. I'm just thinking, like people have bottled up emotions for last 1 year, isolated and all, and suddenly maybe music, and as you are saying the word joy, they can bring the society together in a big
It
way.
might grow bonkers, might go totally nuts. No, but I think you touch on an important point here. Like we started this because it's a fun thing, obviously, but it was also some two other core goals for it. So one was to provide a good platform for new and up and coming bands. So it's a free marketing for them that they can spread and use, and a platform that's a bit bigger than what they can create themselves. But then also the public perception of public transport, because usually, like public transport is not necessarily what people think is the most trendiest and coolest things. But with this, we could be part of changing that. And that was also the value proposition to the Melbourne tram system, which they understood after a lot of convincing, I have to say.
Okay. We had the mayor of Stockholm here like 3 months ago, and we had a lot of discussion with her in terms of, and she really believes in building the cultural side of the city. So Anna Koenig-Hjelmer or your staff, if you guys are listening, this is something we can tap into this.
Yeah, get me on board. I'll set it up.
Perfect. Brilliant. What a nice outcome. Okay. Nicklas, going from, so I think you talked about the farmer background and how that has brought in a sense of solving problems, looking for opportunities. So the entrepreneur inside you is coming from that background. And then you had communication, youth, and joy, let's say 4 clusters joining in together. Where did Reach for Change come in this journey? And how did they start?
So when I was living in Australia, I was working at an incubator for social entrepreneurs. And because I was in the field then, and at the same time I was running tram sessions, that was very much early in the journey of tram sessions. That was the first time I heard of the phrase social entrepreneurship, and it really got to me, like a sort of anchored me, I think.
Okay.
And at that time, I obviously sort of Googled and trying to understand what's in Sweden, what's in Australia, what's the comparisons, what can we learn from each other and so forth. And Reach for Change came up. So I've always had Reach for Change on my radar. And then when I moved back to Sweden, I got to know quite a lot of people from Reach for Change, and we were spending time together in various ways. And then about 3 years ago, there was an opportunity to join Reach for Change, and I needed to I worked at Social Entrepreneurship Forum, which had more of an international sort of angle at that time, and I needed to focus. It was sort of family time for me with kids and stuff, so it was nice to focus on Sweden. So yeah, it was just kind of stars align in a way.
Okay. We take one step back, because you mentioned Australia. And if for our audience, you could share, how is the social entrepreneurship scene in Australia, if we compare to Sweden, for example?
It's really interesting, actually, because Australia and Sweden has a lot of cultural similarities. There's obviously something that's not similar as well. But I think the notion of working for the community and also a strong business sector entrepreneurship experience, it's quite high. So in that way, it's quite similar. I would say like one thing that's a bit different is that the states, they have quite a lot of power compared to in Sweden. Hence, it's quite different in different states. But in the state where I was working most, in Victoria, so where Melbourne is, they have established a really cool ecosystem when it comes to procurement, so social procurement. So how can the state procure products and services from social entrepreneurs in an easier way. So making like trying to stop all these obstacles that can come up with bureaucracy and systems and so forth. So there's a really interesting organization called Social Traders there, and it was started together with the state government. But anyway, they come quite far. So I think that's something that's that's really cool to look at. And Sweden is approaching that, talking a lot more about that, and there's some live projects now as well.
Well, I think that's a very interesting point that you bring in, because when we are meeting entrepreneurs in Companion, for example, and many of these have social innovation ideas, it's usually difficult for them to connect it with the state machinery. We still don't have that level of easy access to funding or support infrastructure place. Like if they can find a Lidiga local, like a place for their foreigning to run the business, I think that's still very emerging. But if you compare it, you said state is a unit at which Australia operates. So what would be the closest unit here? Would it be a commune or a region in Sweden as a state if we compare it with Australia?
Yeah, sure. So it's, I mean, the state has more of the overall funding in Australia. So, I mean, I guess the regions, they are approaching that. Like they were given the task of sort of running that in the latest strategy from the national government. But that strategy, I mean, it hasn't officially ended, but they haven't provided more funding for that. So really, it has ended, if you ask me. So that's similar to the states in Australia and Sweden, that the overall, like sort of the support systems for social entrepreneurs, that's done on a regional/state basis. But then the various municipalities, they I saw even then, and that was, what was it, 10 years ago almost, when I moved back to Sweden, or 8 years ago, that the municipalities that put more emphasis on that, obviously they see more results. So they see more collaborations, and they also see more impact results if they've been working with social entrepreneurs for a longer stint. So the municipalities, they have an ability to really, lift their work and lift the game, I guess.
So which means the exact nodal connection with the entrepreneurs will be the municipalities, and if municipalities can work as a cluster in a region, and then regions can get funding. So that's the level. Thank you so much. I think a great insight at an ecosystem level coming for Sweden when we compare with Sweden with Australia. Going into Reach for Change, for our audience, if you could explain, like, what is it that you do as an organization? How do you help social entrepreneurs, or how do you produce social innovation capital? How does that happen at Reach for Change?
Yeah, so Reach for Change started roughly 10 years ago, and it was done by an activist and social entrepreneur herself, Sara Damber, who had a connection with Kinnevik, so the investment company. And they were trying to form an idea of how can Kinnevik provide value to the social entrepreneurs that's out there. And to make a long story short, they saw that there's millions of kids and young people out in the world today that's in harm's way. And there's also heaps of organizations and people that are trying to fix these problems. However, they don't have the right the funding, capabilities or capacity, resources, networks, and so forth. And that's where Reach for Change comes in. So using some of the business side of things from Kinnevik and now other partners, but to bring capacity building networks. And at the end of the day, it's like a stamp of approval. So we support and empower quite early stage entrepreneurs in many ways. And for them to get a stamp of approval, it means that they can easier attract partners, funders, or selling services or products that they have easier. So that's sort of the general idea of things.
How do you define social entrepreneurs that enter your value chain or the system? Is it that they are just as an idea stage, or have they come to a concept stage? Have they formed a company or an association or a foreigning? Like, what stage of entrepreneurs do you look on one side?
Yeah, so it's early stage, and what we're trying to look at is to see that they have, and this is where it comes in a bit of a difference with social entrepreneurs and regular entrepreneurs.
Okay.
That we also look at trying to see like the impact that they can have on the young people, right? So it's almost like they have the difference that they want to make on the young people and work with, but a lot of the times they sell their products or service or whatever they deliver to someone else. So there's two value propositions there, and we need to make sure that we see potential in both. So in our recruitment process or search and selection, we're trying to look at understanding not just the business model, but actually the impact model, and trying to understand that, and we get some support from industry experts in those way in that section.
Okay, so so the organization that applies to you. One question is like, what stage this idea can be? Can this just be an idea, or they should have started the commercial and the impact side of the business already? Should they be a single individual? Like, is there? How do you know which one to pick, go after? Or which one qualifies?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I'm going to come to, because we have a new initiative. So what I'm saying here won't be right for this year. But as a rule of thumb, we want to make sure that the impact model has a structure and has a bit of a proven effect. I mean, you really need to iterate that all the time, and especially if you're looking at scale later on. But we want to make sure that the idea is not just an idea in the head; it's actually also tried on in our case, the young people. And with the business model, we want it to be a bit of a proven business model, but early stage. And sometimes, and this is also a bit of a difference with social entrepreneurs and traditional entrepreneurs, that sometimes the market isn't really ready. So you work on a hypothesis because the problem is so important and critical for a specific target group of young people, that sometimes we say, well, this impact model is really interesting. It's something that we believe in, and your business model, it feels like it has legs. You haven't tried it as much as we wanted to from the beginning, perhaps, but we see potential in that. And then it's a judgment call for us to make sure, see, is it ready? Do we believe it has legs to come into the incubator? So it's very much around the matching, if our support match the needs of the social entrepreneur.
Okay, but as you're saying, impact is a key over here, and there should be some results or proven track record of the impact for them to be a good fit for your incubator, you said. And that's where we bring in, like, what is it that you offer to them? Is it network? Is it programs? How is the support structured around entrepreneurs? Is it the same model or is it different? So over to you.
Yeah. So in the program that we're running now, the social entrepreneurs that we select, they can be with us for up to 5 years, but usually it's about 3 years.
Okay.
But every year it's a reinvestment decision. So it's an understanding to see if the matching is right, because it's the matching here. It's not. It's not necessarily if they reach certain targets. That's obviously part of the equation, but it's the matching. Is this support what they need? And are we a good fit for them, and so forth? But we are providing co-work engagement programs. So right now, so Kinnevik investor managers, they are working hands-on with some of our entrepreneurs.
Okay.
We have Bain Consulting, who's working. It's a bit of a different system where we have a team of consultants from Bain and company working with specific tasks for our entrepreneurs, which is really cool. We have Rocher, which is a legal firm, where they can have rolling support on some of the legal issues that they face. And then we have one-on-ones with our program managers. Well, in Sweden, it's one senior program manager, where they can sit down and work on their business model, or more of the the regular support that you need in a journey as a social entrepreneur or as an entrepreneur at all. Like it's such an important piece of the puzzle. And then in some instances, we have also seed funding, but that differs a little bit between the years.
Okay. So would you call this an incubator or an accelerator program as it is structured, or would it be more an ad hoc support that they can continuously get over the 3-year period, as you're saying, on average?
So we've chosen to talk about it as an incubation, and we have a structure for that we are measuring the journey that they're on. But then, pending some of the partners that we have, we try to find new opportunities that will fit certain entrepreneurs. So some things are set, and some things are more opportunistic, pending the partners that we work with. So as an example, we have something really cool coming up with Tele2 after the summer, which we hope will take off. So that's also about finding the value proposition for for the partner, but then also for the entrepreneurs, obviously, so they feel that it's the right support for them.
Okay. If we ask, like, what's the throughput of this system? Like, how many entrepreneurs or organizations are able to pass through it on a yearly basis, or how many do you screen? Any broad numbers over there for our community?
So, no, that's good. So over the 10 years, Reach for Change globally has worked with over 1,200 entrepreneurs, so social entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And they have supported over 4.3 million kids, or improved the lives for 4.3 million kids. So that's our theory of change. We change the world for the better for the young people via our social entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And in Sweden, over those 10 years, we've had over 50 social entrepreneurs that we worked with. And in the portfolio, we usually have a number of 8 to 10 all the time. But then sometimes we change, so sometimes there's 2 more coming in 1 year and 2 leaving, and then so that differs a little bit, but roughly.
So in Swedish context, 8 to 10 enterprises, social enterprises or entrepreneurs or clusters you have, and 50 have graduated. Where do you see yourself in the larger ecosystem in Sweden? How would you put yourself against advisory organization or cluster? What role, like, how do you fit in the ecosystem?
I think we've always been a bit of a parallel to the traditional support system. So when it comes to science parks, and so incubators and science parks and so forth, because they never had previously any focus on the social entrepreneurs or the social environmental aspects. I mean, it's increasing rapidly now. However, I would say that there's a lot of work to be done there. So our role has been to push the boundaries. And now I also see that we can support the traditional support system. So, for example, we've done work with Karolinska Institutet and their innovation unit when it comes to impact measurements and so forth. So we are parallel to the traditional support system, but I see now it's aligning more and more to see where we can provide value in various ways. But supporting social entrepreneurs is going to be the key thing for us. We are working a lot with the ecosystem to understand, so making it easier for social entrepreneurs to see where to go and where to get the support and all this kind of stuff. And we can talk about that for ages, because there's a lot of challenges that we're trying to solve there. Companion is part of a new Vinnova setup that we're hoping for, just aligning this thing, which would be great. But I just want to mention briefly the new Swedish strategy for Reach for Change. So the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to focus on reaching the children and young people with the most challenges right now in Sweden. And what we see is that they are in areas with socioeconomic challenges. And we also know, like, one of the things that I did when I started roughly 3 years ago was to see the data where we get our applications, because we've always had, the vision of reaching these young people. But it was very clear to me that we haven't received the applications from these areas of a number of reasons. Even we've tried and been more ambitious than many other organizations, and especially the traditional support system, but we don't reach them. And it's not that strange, because we share office in the Kinnevik building in Gamla Stan. I look like I'm a farmer's son, as I mentioned before. It's not like I'm connected to the roots in suburb of Stockholm or Malmö or whatever. So what we are doing now is a new initiative together with Bling Startup. We're going to run a competition together with them that they started a few years ago called Förorten. So this is very Swedish words here now. But the idea is that we combine our expertise and backgrounds, and we take what was a local competition in Järva, so the more Stockholm region, and we're going to take that nationally. So we're going to work in specifically Malmö and Gothenburg as well, and together find these social entrepreneurs and female founders that really can make a good dent in these areas and lift the areas from within, rather than having someone coming in and fix problems for them, because there are already so much potential and ideas and thoughts there. So that's sort of the new journey that we're on, that's a bit more targeted.
I think that's very interesting that you bring it up, and I think there's a lot of work going on in the recent couple of years in that direction. We recently had a competition with Break It, and I think Bling was there as well with that Shift Capital. And I think they are in their last round with, what was that, 10 or 15 companies which will now be pitching. 10 companies which will now be pitching to investors. So I think that's great you are taking that initiative. Now, if startups need to come and apply to or kind of align with Reach for Change in these areas, I think one key question is, how do you define the target group in terms of when you say children and youth? How do you define that? Is it an age that you follow? Yeah.
So we try to follow some international guidelines, just because there's so many definitions around age groups and so forth, but up to 25. But usually we are working in the span of teens. So say from 10 up to 18 is usually, if you look at the companies that we have in our portfolios. But it's more important to see the impact model and to understand what they're trying to achieve. So that's more important than the specific age group.
Completely understood. You mentioned also the international footprint of Reach for Change. And if we take that discussion to two sides, let's tap into that. Does that become helpful for the entrepreneurs who are in your system? So question one is that entrepreneurs who are already in your cohorts and getting support from Reach for Change Sweden, do they get in touch with the outside organizational arms that you have? And second is, in how many cases you think these entrepreneurs are local versus international focused? So two things. Maybe it's the same question, but I just put it out there.
No, good. I think personally that we can grow the collaboration in between countries. Leaders, it was called Bridget. So we've had female funders, and they do common joint activities and capacity building and so forth. So the answer to that question is yes, and we can improve it. And I think it makes it easier now also with the tools that we have and the experience that we have from the pandemic as well. And when it comes to making organizations go international, I think here is probably also one of the differences or other aspects that's interesting to really dig deep into. We work with social entrepreneurs who has a deep connection with the target group that they're trying to work with, and a deeper understanding. And sometimes, the local context just looks very different in other areas of the world. Hence making it a bit more different, because sometimes it's around spreading the solution or replicating the solution, not necessarily scaling the solution. And that can be done via collaboration, or it can be done with replication as an example. But the local context is very important in many of the fields where our social entrepreneurs are working.
I think this is very important that you bring that local connection. And I think that kind of goes back and relates to how the funding and support structure is structured when we talked about Australia and then regional and commune levels. Knowing your local problem may be a good way of getting local support for entrepreneurs. So you are hands-on with your thing. And that's where I think I'd like to ask one more question. So Eric, who is the CEO of Norcan, Eric Engler-Nielsen, he was here in December, and he talked about that when they are assessing startups, if I remember correctly from his discussion, they look for three things. It was the startup needs to have impact, which in your case is there as well. But they also like to see that the startup or the venture or the entrepreneur team has a tech focused and a global scalability in focus. The other two, so I do understand that Reach for Change has impact as one of the key criteria. You're talking about that the startups, we look at both the impact and the business side. But do you look at the tech and globalness of a solution, or is it not that much a focus for Reach for Change when you are working with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's a good question. Tech has traditionally, it hasn't been a component in the criteria. It's been an element, as many other parts of how you set up your organization has been an element. I think this comes back a little bit to the impact model that I was talking about previously as well. What kind of impact are you trying to achieve? Is it more of the light touch, bit further up, and you can scale it? So you lose a little bit of control of what you are changing, but you can spread it to the masses in a different way. Or are you trying more on a deeper level, which means it's harder to scale? It needs more resources and more heavy lifting. So that's also like something that's important to look at. So for us, we've been talking about tech as an enabler rather than a component that's needed. I think that there's both an opportunity and a challenge with digitalization right now, that we can jump really far and high and long with tech, but there's also a risk that we miss the deep connection with the target group that we're trying, like who we're trying to solve the problem for, because we are too focused on the cool app or opportunity that we see with the tech. But if we don't have the connection with the target group, that will be an issue. And there's a lot of organizations in Sweden with that local context, and trying to enable them to do better work and scale their work using tech as an enabler, rather than having someone new coming in with a new app that doesn't necessarily have the experience of the context. We risk missing out on good ideas and really like already proven concepts.
Brilliant. I think I'll take a short moment here for the audience. So I think a good point to ponder for the audience who have joined in here, like when you see your venture, are you thinking that this is a tech-enriched venture, or is it built on the tech as the core component, or is tech an enabler to your idea? I think that's one side to look at your venture. And then you brought out a very interesting thought, which is, are you going for impact? So impact can happen both ways. You can go light and scale, or you can go deep and have those connections and solve, as you were saying previous to this point, local. So I think it's very interesting insight, and it's a good insight for the entrepreneurs as well, in terms of when you're thinking of your business model, is it the light and scale, or is it the local deep connection and solutions on ground where you are hands-on? So very interesting points. Coming to, you also mentioned the word COVID in the last couple of minutes. How has that changed? Has that affected your work in your incubator? How? Two questions. Has that affected Reach for Change in some way? Have you seen COVID affecting social entrepreneurs' work in some way? Yeah, who are in your programs? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So with Reach for Change, short term, it hasn't changed too much. We because we're a global organization, we work a lot online and so forth. I mean, it's the same issues as everyone else. With it's not as fun to be in the basement as in being with my friends at work. So you lose a lot of the energy and inspiration and so forth. Long term, I think there will be challenges in terms of funding. So looking at, I'm talking about Reach for Change now. That there's a lot of companies, especially from the corporate sector, looking at where are they going to go, how are they going to go. So it's a bit. I would say that the market is a little bit more. What do you call it? Like it's moving around a bit more fluid than it was previously. Doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, that reevaluating and sort of aligning with strategies and stuff, but it just makes it a little bit more fluid at the moment. Okay. I think the institutional funding will grow. The importance of that will grow to get the long-term perspective. In terms of our social entrepreneurs, we did some surveys in the beginning to try to understand what they're looking at. What kind of challenges they are facing, and it was clear that funding is an issue, that there's partners who cut funding or opportunities that just went away, and that's both in terms of a grant level, but also sales of services and products, and also they have to do a lot more digital than they've done before. So with that means less of the human contact, and I think also lost a bit of control of the impact that you're trying to do, because it's a bit hard to gauge the change that you are creating online like this. So they have to, some of them have redone a lot of their activities to suit the digital. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, and some of them have come up with really cool hybrid models and so forth as well. But funding, obviously, a big thing. And then I think in terms of the incubator, something that's been really challenging and something that I think that we will focus even more on is the human connection within the group. So the peer-to-peer. It's harder to get that online. So even if we have, trying to get strategies for how to get that to work, but in times of worries, it's even more important to make sure that you have a strong connection with peers. And I saw that you had, questions around tribe and so forth. It's a really lonely journey, and I think it's become even more lonelier, and that's a worry. So I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Okay. Yeah. You have experience of handling so many social enterprises or entrepreneurs. What you think is one thing that, or two things maybe, which entrepreneurs or social enterprises can improve on or can transform themselves on and become more successful? What you think in your journey is the most important factors for social entrepreneurs to focus on?
Yeah, I think it's the ability to have both the customer and the target group, and have the focus on them both, and that's really tricky. So some of the entrepreneurs that we work with, they come from a background of just looking at the target group, and that's a real strength in that, to understand that and to understand the impact that you're making. But if you don't have the customer focus on who you're going to sell to, it's going to be hard to achieve what you want to achieve. At the same time, as we've had, and this is not just talking about Reach for Change, but in my previous experiences as well, that if you only have the customer focus, it's very easy to just lose. You just lose why your company, your why. And if you lose your why, you're nothing. So I think that kind of scale is important to have with you at all times. And then I think if I would choose two things, so that's the one thing, and then the second one would probably be around the tribe. So build, and it's not necessarily the you know, the distinct advice or the business advice, or you know, the stuff that you often think that you need. Oh, I need to get my business model right. Oh, I need to, you know, I need to get my accounting right, or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's about building your confidence to understand that, okay, I can make it right now. I don't know what it is, but I can, because I have belief in my ability to get to where I go, or I know where to ask, or where to get that information, and where to get that help. So I think the scale and then the tribe.
Okay, so tribe, and then you said the scale of between knowing your customer and the target group and working on both sides. So I think that's very interesting. And how do you think, so when social entrepreneurs are coming to you, which is there some research, or have you found, is it, because when we meet entrepreneurs and companion, for example, my experience is there are some who have an idea to change the world, but they're going to be doing their job and they try to build it on the side. Somebody just leaves the jobs and starts doing it on an Okasa. Somebody has some investment and they try to run it for 6 months. What is the success factor? If you want to be really a social entrepreneur, how deep you need to go into your work to make it a success? I think it's a very broad question, but I'm still putting it there. Let's see.
Yeah, let's see what we come up with.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, you need to be deep connected, and I think that's the same for entrepreneurs as well. Like the ones, especially in the beginning, it's hard. You know, it's like it's a lot of grit that needs to come out, and you need to build on that and not giving up and all that whole thing. But I think to be able to ask you the right questions, and to be able to ask the right questions actually as a foundation. So question yourself, because if you don't understand what you want to change, and if you don't understand who's going to buy your products or services or your solution, you can't get anywhere. And sometimes it's easy to just focus on the one thing because maybe you have a tendency to like that more, or you know that you're more comfortable with that. But if your true aim is to, you know, make it better for the target group, but then also build the business, you need to be able to have them both, and you need to ask yourself the tough questions. And sometimes you need help in getting those tough questions asked to you.
Okay. Very good. We can turn to audience. I think we have some questions coming in. Marina, if you want to join in, I'll bring you up here. Just a minute. And we can take some audience question now. So Marina, you are coming live. 5, 4. I won't speak more. Hi, Marina.
Hi. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you very much for the super insightful exchange you had, Nicklas and Naimo. Really cool to hear about your work, Nicklas, also before, how it started in Australia. And I guess it's fair to say that like this is maybe one of the first generation that gets such a good opportunity in terms of programs and support. I guess 50 years ago was not a thing, and definitely maybe even for my generation was not a thing. So it really listening to you made me wonder, how will the world look like if many kids are touched by those programs? It really it's amazing. I'm really curious to see how the world can change, you know, just because of the work you do, because you set the ground for the next 50 years of development. So yeah, thank you so much. Super inspiring. I will just take all of the time for the questions now, and I will start with Zainab Hefni, sorry. And she's really amazed by all what you're describing, and she's asking, can I apply as a sole trader company, or should it be a non-profit or an AB? What type of company can apply, first of all?
So to begin with, förorten, so looking at the year that comes, that's open for all legal statuses. Like, doesn't matter which kind of legal entity you have, and it will begin in August. I can't say the exact date now, but you will see that. Otherwise, in the portfolio, many of them have a non-profit status, but sometimes they have a company that's owned by the association.
Okay. So great. So Zainab, I think if you're a sole trader, you can apply.
It's much easier to say yes. Yeah. Yes.
That's great. No, that's
in August.
Yeah. Misunderstanding. And then she has a follow-up question that also connects to a question from Marcus Berg, and it is so Zainab specifically has a cultural-based coaching service for immigrant parents in Sweden. And through her service, they learn how to build a healthier relationship with their kids. And her focus group is immigrant parents. So would this be considered an impact on young people's life? And is that eligible?
I think it can be. Obviously, it's hard with sort of light information, but at the end of the day, it's the impact on the children. So if you can find indicators and understanding like the theory of change, of how you have impact on the children that you want to have impact on, then yes. And maybe we have some online tools that's free at the moment. We can maybe send that in a link or an email, send that out. Otherwise, you go to reachforchange.org, and then up to the right, I think there's a toolkit that you can go in and have a look. And that's where you can find this theory of change, all these fancy words that I use. And you can just pop stuff in there and get some examples of how it's been done previously.
Great. I will see if I can find a link. I hope that answered your question. Both Zainab and Marcus, I guess it all comes down on, even if your target group is not the kids, how can your theory of change prove that there is an impact on the kids? And then you should be eligible. That's great. And then we have a question from Susan and Michael. Actually, they had a similar question. Susan is bringing up this example of Change X in Ireland, and she wonders if you know about it. If you know about this initiative?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, she's describing it as it's a great initiative for scaling up impactful social and community initiatives. And they take successful models and adapt and make them easy and accessible for our community to implement, I guess, across the country.
Okay, but then I do know of it. And we're actually having this is based on our discussion that we had previously, right, around scaling or replicating or what you do to create the most change. I think that's more interesting rather than talking, but only focusing on scale. It's scale of the impact, and that can be reached by replication or spreading, not necessarily scaling of a company or entity.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. And do you know any other example? Michael is asking as a follow-up question. Do you know any other example elsewhere?
Of incubators or examples of companies?
Yeah, of scaling impact on organizations that help scaling impact locally, I guess, or regionally.
I mean, we work in Sweden. We work with Inkludera, which is another organization as an example. I think internationally there's quite a few. We're starting a new project it's a collaboration within the EU social economy program, together with an organization called Avis in France. So I will learn more about that, which will be really exciting. And then I think if you're interested in the ecosystem side of things, Scotland is really interesting. So they actually have a national strategy with funding attached to it as well. And then you obviously can create a bit more of a change. So that you can find interesting things there.
Thank you very much. I hope that answered your question, Michael. And then we have a question from Pratik Bijam. He's asking, do you help social entrepreneurs in different countries find the right team? We are trying to solve the housing crisis in Sweden as regulations don't permit us to do the same in India. I'm not sure. Yeah. So
the question is if you have
entrepreneurs building a team as well as part of your program,
like cross borders kind of thing, or
that's a good question. I guess Pratik can answer in the chat if he's listening.
But I think what I can say in general, a lot of the times the social entrepreneurs who's in our programs, they grow. So building team is sort of part of the process. So yes, we support that. When it comes to internationalization, so if we have an organization who's, I mean, we work a lot with early stage, so a lot of the times they don't start our incubator with offices in other countries. However, it is a bit different though. When I say that we work with early stage, in Ethiopia, as an example, we work with rapid scale programs, so a bit different. So the markets are a little bit different, but
he's based in Sweden, so he's looking for, I guess, co-founders, and I guess he's needing help to find more. And is this something that he can rely on to Reach for Change for?
Not connecting necessarily. So you can go and have a look at the website and see if there's any social entrepreneurs there who fit the criteria, if you want to do a joint collaboration or so forth. But we are not actively connecting funders or co-founders. No.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yes. Thank you very much. For now, those were the main type of questions. And I guess we can. Oh, it's 2 already anyway, so we shouldn't go more. Otherwise, I have other questions.
Perfect. Brilliant. I think really good questions and really inspiring work at Reach for Change. And what an inspiring background you have, Nicklas. I think the way you put focus on communication, entrepreneurship, joy, and youth, I think that's sticky. That it's stuck over here. So I think it's good, and it's good to have a focus like that. If you are a social entrepreneur, like define your 2 or 3 main areas where your focus is. So really, really thankful to you for being here and on Startup Grind community. Thank you so much, Marina, for taking the questions, to all the community out there who have been engaged in this discussion, and the Startup Grind Stockholm team. And our partners like Companion, Dev Relevance. Guys, thank you so much for making this a success. We'll stay in touch, and let's do great work together.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.